When you think of an animated movie that is filled with tropes and cliches, what film comes to your mind? Some people thank Quest for Camelot for trying to be like Disney so much to the point where the character designs look too close to looking exactly like a Disney movie, and also ripping off the genie from Aladdin in a way that doesn't work. Others think The Wild, as it not only takes Madagascar, but also The Lion King and Finding Nemo, and mixes it into a blender without realizing what made either one of those films work. Others think Escape from Planet Earth for taking Planet 51 and Mars Needs Moms and sucking out all bits of creativity, and most infamously, The Emoji Movie, which not only takes the concept of Wreck-It Ralph, but also takes the Lego Movie and Inside Out, mashes them together, and fill it to the brim with every animated movie cliche you could ever think of. And while yes, The Emoji Movie is the biggest example to use out of all of these, that film has been beaten to the ground as is. And yes, that along with the latter three, they'll be getting their just dues another time, as those four are not the main focus of this review. That honor would definitely go to the movie I'm reviewing today, Duck Duck Goose, which in all honesty is one of the most cliched animated movies that I've ever seen. The most cliched? No, The Emoji Movie holds that spot, but oh wow, Duck Duck Goose is extremely close to being on that level. So, what is the premise of this movie? This movie revolves around an egotistical goose named Ping. Before his flock of geese take off, he messes up by goofing around and making a mess all over the place, to the point where Bing forbids him from flying south for the winter with them. Ping ends up getting stuck with two ducklings named Chi and Chow, whom he's forced to stick with as Chow distracts him and makes his arm become crippled in the process, and decides to tell them that he's helping them find their herd of ducklings, but in actuality, he uses them to help him get back with this flock of geese. Oh gee, I wonder what's gonna happen. And such a lovable protagonist, isn't he? And while they're on their adventure, they're also on the run from, honestly, one of the best parts of the movie, which is the villain, and the characters need to make it to their location before it starts snowing. Now, there are actually two other animated movies that this one reminds me of, and those movies are The Emperor's New Groove and Despicable Me. The Emperor's New Groove, with the fact that the main character is a jerk that needs to learn to become a better person, and Despicable Me, where the main character is stuck with these kids that get under his skin throughout the whole movie, but learns to enjoy their company throughout the movie. However, one of the main issues that I have with this movie is regarding Ping. All throughout the entirety of the movie, it tries to use tactics that other animated movies use to make the main character look as sympathetic as possible, but the problem with this movie is that it tries to have its audience feel sorry for Ping, but considering what Ping does throughout the movie, he certainly doesn't earn my sympathy in the slightest. The point of putting said character into this grueling situation is to have that character learn from his mistakes and grow to have a change of heart. Question movie, why should I feel sorry for Ping in the slightest when he shows throughout the entirety of the movie that he doesn't even care about anyone else but himself? And even up to the point where it was about to reach the Act 2 breakup, Ping has not changed in the slightest, and he keeps his lie that he's been keeping to himself all the way until it blows up in his face. And he literally doesn't learn his lesson regarding his narcissistic and selfish attitude until his wing gets fixed. And oh, I don't know, when he starts having more of a bond with these ducklings? Like, even the first Cars movie, as unlikable as Lightning was, at least had him learn his lesson not to be a jerk before he ended up being taken back to compete in the final race. And it's insanely obvious that he only has these two ducklings as his buddies along for the trip because he wants to save his own feathers, rather than helping them get back with their herd, which Ping caused them to be separated from their herd in the first place, might I add. If anything, him coming up with the idea to take advantage of these two ducklings right after his wing breaks is the fastest way to make your audience lose sympathy for you, considering the fact that he's visibly freaking out due to his wing snapping and being left behind. And that is the last thing that you want your audience to feel while watching a movie. Granted, the way that Fraser and Gillis were acting when they find out was a bit harsh, but the more he shows his lies as well as his manipulation towards Chi and Chow, this seems more like a long-time act of karma inflicted upon him than something mean-spirited, which reminds me, this movie does get pretty mean-spirited at some parts, with Bing, Fraser, and Gillis not even even caring about what could happen to Ping and the fact that he could freeze to death. Which is kind of messed up when you think about it, because him messing things up at the beginning of the film is not even the worst part of what he does in the movie, but it is a part of nature to mess up. But as I stated before, something being mean-spirited isn't inherently a problem, as long as the movie is enjoyable enough for that to slide. However, the issue is that this movie is not even enjoyable, and it has a lot of the same issues as Monster Family, but only slightly better for reasons I'll get to in a bit. Only, this movie has a lot more cliches, and that maybe wouldn't be an issue, but like Rock Dog, that's only part of the issue and why I don't like this movie. This movie isn't as bad as Monster Family, because Duck Duck Goose at least has some semblance of a story, even though as stated, it's beyond generic, and at the very least, the characters are not as hateable, as the only one that I do actually dislike a lot is the main character Ping, but this movie has a good amount of the same problems. One of them being the mean-spirited angle, one of them being the fact that every other character is bland and one-dimensional, one of them is that the character that the movie wants us to feel sympathy for is redeemed at the last second, when said character was being awful throughout the film, and this film is not funny in the slightest. Yes, this movie at least has what you can consider as actual jokes, unlike Monster Family. The jokes that this movie tries to attempt suffer from the fact that they're both immature and predictable. In fact, the trailer, which got me to say that this is one of my least anticipated animated movies of 2018, had a clip where Ping has a pig's butt shoved into his face. And it's not much better in the film itself. He gets it shoved into his face a total of 3 times in the movie. One time, as soon as it was shoved into his face, the pig farts into his face. And there's quite a few moments where characters get bird poop dropped onto them. You know, because this movie revolves around ducks and geese, let's make this movie as gross as possible. There's also one part of the movie where I'm not even joking. While the geese are flying in the sky, one of them suggests to make a hashtag formation. You know, because this movie came out in the 2010 decade, we need to make this movie as hip and trendy as possible. This is really baffling for the same reason why Gary from Sahara, knowing what pizza and Batman and Robin are, is so bewildering, because these characters shouldn't even know what these things are if they don't have any experience with technology or human things. And last time I checked, this movie is set in a place where there's no technology in the slightest. They also decided to go the Butch Hartman route, where they put in a "and then the opposite happens" joke, where Jinjang says that Ping knows what he's doing. Then it immediately cuts away to Chi saying, "You have no idea what you're doing." Although, I will say that the animation in this movie is very good. The scene that was set in that cave filled with green sparkles was beautiful, and the scenes that were set in this Chinese town were phenomenal. But as the old saying goes, good writing can save bad animation, but bad writing can never be saved by good animation. And also, one other thing that cements this movie as being slightly better than Monster Family is that the villain of the movie, Bonzu, is a great villain and offers some of the most entertaining parts of the movie that even I was surprised about. When we first see him in the movie, he immediately gets thrown into the water where he is eaten by a huge fish, then gets out of the water the next morning, and it's shown that he ate the inside of said fish and all that is left is a skeleton. That is awesome. And the entertaining parts of him is his mannerisms and how he has a playfully sadistic side, as well as a more feisty side. And going into this movie for the first time, I was expecting this movie to be really, really stupid, and that it wouldn't have a character like this. But the villain ended up being one of the few highlights that I have with this movie. But other than that, even though this movie is slightly better than Monster Family, that is definitely not saying much. That's like saying that getting covered in mud while wearing a raincoat is better than being covered in mud while not wearing a coat at all while it's raining. Honestly, just watch Despicable Me instead. Even though Gru in that movie also used the children he adopted to receive something, he at least changed before it was too late. And also watch The Emperor's New Groove instead for a story about a jerk character, because even though I haven't watched that movie yet, I heard that it's much more funny and Cusco actually learns over time that what he did was wrong. While for Duck Duck Goose, you're not missing much if you decide to skip it.